Sage Wanderer here, and welcome to the end of the world as we know it, and I feel fine. Okay, it's been a while since we've done one of these World War III updates, but let's talk about the condition of the world. A few things that have happened since we spoke last. I guess the big headline is the president of Iran is dead. Now, at first, they just said it was a hard landing, and they covered up that it was a helicopter crash. I find it interesting that this helicopter was part of a 3 helicopter convoy, and they do this often when moving heads of state about, whether it's in vehicles or in aircraft. They have 3 helicopters that are identical. One of them contains the high-end dignitaries. The other 2 are security personnel. And it's a big game of whack-a-mole. It's a big game of 3-card Monty, right? It's like hide the pea under the cup and guess which of the 3 helicopters. So of these 3 helicopters, ironically, coincidentally, potentially, the one with the dignitaries in it crashes. And at first they tell us that the crash was because of fog. But now the truth is coming out that the helicopter, when it lost power or started its descent and eventual crash, the helicopter was above the fog line. So it didn't crash because of fog. They didn't just fly into the side of a mountain. That's a nice, handy tale that's being told. What I do find interesting is that immediately upon the crash occurring, Russian press put forth statements that the Iranian president, even when they were still looking for him, even when they still wouldn't confirm that it was a crash, even when they didn't, they were saying they were looking for the president, but they had not got to the crash site. So in the very beginnings of reporting on this, the Russian press comes out and says that the president of Iran has been assassinated by the CIA of the United States. So they reported on this. Of course, this was not an official government statement. However, recently, Putin, in an interview, said that he was doing everything he could to assist Iran in finding out the true cause of the helicopter crash. Now, you could race off into a lot of speculation about whether we did it. I will say the Israelis came right out on the day of and said, we didn't kill the guy. And so that was not suspicious at all. Right? We didn't do it. That's be like, talk to that guy who's saying he didn't do it. But yeah, so now we have a power vacuum in the nation of Iran. And the problem with power vacuums is that it's going to be filled by someone. We do not know the nature of this someone. Right now they have an interim president who was the vice president. We don't know if he was in agreement with the president of Iran in how to handle foreign policy, their opinions on war, how they handle Israel, and the back and forth that's been occurring there. So we don't know if the next person to arise in Iran is going to be more moderate or more radical. That there is this belief that the people of Iran believe that Iran is blessed by Allah, and that Iran can do no wrong, that it's under the blessings of Allah. And now with this happening to their president, some people speculate that there will be a loss of faith in the government, a feeling that God did this, that Allah did this to them because they're not doing something right. So the right person could emerge in Iran and say something along the lines of, see, this is evidence that they were too soft on Israel. They're not prosecuting Allah's commands. They're not going out and trying to conquer the world enough, and Allah is upset with us, and that's why our president was killed, and now we're going to rectify this with a more radical agenda. I guess that is the big fear. Meanwhile, China and Russia have come out since the last time we talked and announced their new world order. That's right, the famous NWO slogan is now being adopted by this coalition between Russia and China. Xi Jinping and Vladimir Putin released conversations publicly of them openly discussing how they're going to destroy the United States of America, replace the Western societies with a new world order ran by China and Russia. Any of you who might be Alex Jones fans will know that Alex Jones made statements like this as far back as 2014, that the powers that be, the elites, the people that want the one world government and the new world order, had given up on the United States primarily due to Trump and the rise of the right wing Americans and patriots who stand against that kind of concept and want to see the United States as its own autonomous, self-governing nation without the help of any oversight from any foreigners. And that because we own a lot of guns, because a lot of us are veterans, because the military was full of them, they changed their strategy and they embraced China. Alex Jones, as early as 2015, 2016, was openly saying that the elites have replaced the United States with China, and now they're putting all of their energy into grooming China to bring in the New World Order. And here we are, so many years later, and China and Russia, Putin and Xi Jinping are openly discussing how they're going to take over the world. Plan number one is the economic ruin of the United States by replacing the petrodollar of the United States with foreign currencies that are gold-backed. So the United States is a fiat currency. It's based solely on our power, our authority, our economic power, our military power, our political influence in the world, because we were taken off of the gold standard. And so now our money is just paper backed by our reputation. I guess it was about 15 to 16 years ago, I read a book called The Crash of the Petrodollar. In this book, an expert global economics expert wrote this book painting the picture of what would happen if for some reason the United States stopped being the base currency that everyone hoarded for their wealth. That other nations who have stores of wealth didn't store it in gold for decades. They stored it in greenbacks, U.S. American dollars. Whenever anyone bought oil or any other commodity internationally, they would make all the deals in U.S. dollars. Now, I won't get into what a racket that was for us, how them using our currency actually made our currency worth more, making our purchasing power internationally stronger. But there's a whole, it's almost a racket how we did this. And it was pretty easy, even if they just read the book I read from 15, 20 years ago, that if the foreign countries stopped trading in dollars, stopped hoarding dollars, U.S. dollars, stopped buying commodities, specifically oil in U.S. dollars, what a catastrophe that would be for the U.S. economy. In the book that I read about the crash of the petrodollar, that they said if sometime in the future, remember this was like 15, 16 years ago, if sometime in the future the global economy would stop using the U.S. dollar for trade and for hoarding, would stop buying U.S. treasuries as a way of storing their wealth, that the U.S. economy would suffer a crash that made 1933 look like nothing. And so here we are all these years later, and that's exactly what has happened. China and Russia have joined together and drawn in Saudi Arabia, Venezuela, another oil powerhouse, several other countries. I think the last time I heard, either India was joining or thinking about joining. And so you have this coalition of nations now that have agreed not to use the U.S. dollar for their trade, but to use the Chinese currency or the Russian currency or any other currency or just gold. In response to this, nations that normally would have stored their wealth in U.S. dollars or U.S. treasuries have been selling off their U.S. treasuries and purchasing gold as a way to cover their own back for the coming economic apocalypse, which is going to likely hit at any moment. If the author of that book all those years ago was right, we are looking at something that we don't see coming. We're staring right at it, but we don't see it coming. And China is offloading millions, billions of dollars in U.S. Treasury bonds, causing them to be devalued because of the amount that they're selling. And this is not by accident. This is part of a coordinated plan where China and Russia have actually not just linked themselves through trade, but have linked their economies, their stock markets and other things, their banking is all now the same. Same. China, Russia, same economically when it comes to their international efforts. So what we're seeing is the open, intentional, and very strategic destruction of the U.S. economy, and nobody's talking about it. Nobody's doing anything about it. This group called BRICS have agreed to use other currencies and to basically ban the U.S. dollar. But that is the fault of Joe Biden. Joe Biden and his opinions concerning Russia and the invasion of Ukraine have the sanctions he put against Russia, the banking bans that he put against Russia. Biden made this happen by isolating Russia, and instead of starving, instead of not being able to do business, they built in just a couple of years a coalition of nations that made it so they don't need our dollar. They don't need trade with Western countries, and they're dominating now financially with this new union with Russia, where Xi Jinping and Vladimir Putin sit down together and discuss the new world order ran by China and Russia collectively. And this is something that Alex Jones saw all those years ago and said that they'd already decided they'd given up on America. We're not governable. We have too many rights for them to be able to make their plan happen with America at the helm. And so we're seeing the involvement in Ukraine, the money we're sending to Ukraine, us standing behind this war in Ukraine, and the United States standing behind Israel while they bomb civilians and commit international crimes, which, by the way, I predicted at the very beginning of the Gaza-Israeli conflict that Benjamin Netanyahu and the Israeli government would be indicted and eventually convicted of capital crimes, international crimes, war crimes by the International Court of Justice, which goes after nations, and the International Criminal Court, which goes after individuals. Both have issued warrants now. Well, I believe the individual warrants are waiting on an international judge to sign off on them, but they put forth these warrants asking a judge to sign off on them on Benjamin Netanyahu, also the leader of Hamas. So they're going after both sides in this chaos. And most of the people that are prosecuting the war under Benjamin Netanyahu, and you can see that I predicted this back on October 8th or 9th of last year, right after the attacks against Israel. I predicted everything, including them pushing all of the Palestinians into the southern portion of the state with the intention of eventually eradicating all of Gaza, of every Palestinian, and forcing them all to move on, and claiming that country for Israel and turning it into beachfront property. That hasn't come true yet, but there's been lots of leaks that that's been their plan from the very beginning. So we have America falling in popularity worldwide because of our involvement in the atrocities in Israel, because of our involvement in Ukraine. Now, the Ukrainian war is all but lost. The Ukrainians have lost so many that it's killed 2 generations of Ukrainian men. And now they're fielding the very young, the very old, and female soldiers. And it's very clear to anybody who knows anything about war that if they don't bring troops in from places like France, Germany, and the United States to replace these dead Ukrainians, that Russia wins by default. They win because they have more people to throw into this war machine and sacrifice, for the war. So, but Putin has said, if you send in NATO troops into Ukraine to support the Ukrainian war effort, we will nuke you. We will not just nuke you in Ukraine, we will nuke you in your country of origin, at your place of work. We will send the bombs directly to your doorstep. And he has said this very clearly. Now, the last time we talked on the World War III topic, they were just beginning to announce that they were going to do nuclear drills, and they hadn't yet started moving any of their tactical nuclear weapons along the border with Ukraine. But since that time passed, they have exercised many tactical nuclear weapons drills, and they have put all of the pieces, all of the launchers in place, pointed in the right direction. So right now there's a ring of fire of tactical nuclear weapons pointed at the Ukrainian battlefield, and they daily drill with those, and those weapons are ready to go. So call Putin's bluff at your own risk, right? And luckily I'm too old to send over there, and I live in the middle of nowhere, so if somebody gets nuked, it probably won't be me. But nonetheless, it ain't good to have this kind of conflict going on and us pushing these people who already have announced they want to destroy America. They want to replace America. And how better to replace America than to nuke us and or EMP us, or use those tsunami subs that I talk about a lot on this channel. And we just keep pushing the envelope. We just keep doubling down on stupid. Will Donald Trump be able to save us from a future war with Russia and China? It's hard to say at this point whether Donald Trump will even be allowed by the powers that be that are in control of higher levels of our government, the Department of Justice and the FBI, would actually ever allow him to take the presidency again. But as far as the election goes, polling shows that if the election were held right now, Donald Trump would win in a landslide. Why is that? Where are the changes coming from? Why are the people siding with Donald Trump in a way that they've never done really in the past? This is the best polling he's ever experienced. And the bottom line is this. People see our Department of Justice, people see our district attorneys in blue districts coming after him with these made up, trumped up charges, these false allegations, they take misdemeanors that they really can't prove and then charge them for felonies and are trying to push it forth. But the justice system is keeping the playing field level. As of right now, as far as we can tell, as of right now, the jury is in the Stormy Daniels case is about to go in to be sequestered and have their verdict. And closing arguments will happen next Tuesday, and then the jury will be given their charges. And it looks to me like the prosecuting attorneys did not do a good job of selling their case that what Donald Trump did was illegal, proving beyond a reasonable doubt that what Donald Trump did was or what happened is something that Donald Trump even knew about. And his former lawyer, Cohen, went on the stand and pretty much shot their case to pieces accidentally. He hates Trump. That's part of the problem. And he admitted to stealing $30,000, which actually is more like $60,000 when you do the math, from Donald Trump during this Stormy Daniels press cover-up thing that he's being accused of. So the harder they try to frame Donald Trump, the harder they try to create crimes where there aren't any, the harder that they come after him, the more the press dogs him, the more the people love him. And his biggest growth area is in African American support. That he's getting more support from the African American community than any Republican ever. And when you talk to them about it, why do you now support Donald Trump? A lot of them say, they've been doing this to us for decades. They've been doing this to us from the very beginning. They make up charges on us. The cops lie on us. They bring in false witnesses, and they railroad us into jail. And we have been screaming from the rooftops that the justice system is rigged against us. And now you can finally see it because they're doing the same thing to Donald Trump. And this is why African Americans say that they support Donald Trump, because now they know that somebody who has the potential to go into the White House knows what what it feels like to have false allegations brought against them, to have false prosecution brought against them, to have the system rigged against them and out to get them. And they love that Donald Trump has now had a taste of this medicine, and they're thinking he might actually do something about it. Now, they're going to have to cheat on a massive level to garner any kind of win for Joe Biden. That from the polling, it appears that this is a landslide, that Donald Trump might win states over to the Republican Party that have not been won by a Republican since Ronald Reagan's landslide in 1984. That in 1984, Ronald Reagan brought so many people together that he had a landslide, vast majority, hands down win. And it looks like we might have that level of landslide again for Donald Trump. Can they cheat enough to outdo that sudden groundswell of support? That remains to be seen. Will they lock up Donald Trump? Will his helicopter mysteriously crash in fog that's not there? Dun, dun, dun. That leads us to the final part of our video, where we talk about how everyone has realized, due to some documents that were put forth in the this is about the top secret documents case against Donald Trump. When they raided Mar-a-Lago, they authorized the FBI to use deadly force if necessary. So they sent people in there, and the right wing is saying with the intention of assassinating Donald Trump. But I actually have a problem with that narrative, because FBI agents do not have the power and authority, even if the president told them to murder somebody in cold blood and use deadly force like a soldier could in a foreign country. There is protections within the Constitution that prohibits civilian law enforcement from having any more rights than you or I do when it comes to self-defense. That no policeman has the authority to kill somebody in cold blood, even if the President of the United States said so, even if the district attorney said so, even if the state police captain said so. That's a crime. The only rights that law enforcement have to use deadly force is the same rights you and I have, the right to self-defense. Anytime they use deadly force that goes beyond self-defense, they are held accountable. Many times the judge is on their side. I'm not saying that justice has been served, but I'm telling you, it was always legal. The gun on their hip and the badge in their hand gives them the right not just to arrest somebody, but the right to self-defense, which is the same right that you and I both have. All of us have the right to defend our lives. So to say that they were authorized to use deadly force is kind of ridiculous. The argument might be they were not restrained from using deadly force, because anyone can use deadly force against anyone else in defense of their life, and that's the only thing you can do apart from a foreign war action. So unless war's been declared against Donald Trump, none of those men could shoot anybody unless somebody first threatened them with a firearm or they were in fear of their life and could prove it. So I don't really get the uproar. Just, hey, my first clue they were authorized to use deadly force was all that body armor, all those rifles, all those armored vehicles, all of those highly trained murderous men who executed those warrants at Mar-a-Lago. Of course they would have killed anybody who stood up for themselves. Just like they'd kill me and you if they came to our house with a warrant and we didn't roll over and put our hands up. And nowadays, you get shot sometimes even just rolling over and putting your hands up. Would they, being the powers that be, love to have seen some kind of conflict at Mar-a-Lago when they served that warrant? Absolutely, and they came prepared for just that. There is this paranoia among the left, and I see it also in our law enforcement, that Comey, the former director of the FBI, was on CNN or one of these other ridiculous cable news networks, and he said, he made this big speech about how we have to defeat Donald Trump, because if he gets elected, the FBI, it might be under threat from President Trump. That's going to garner a lot of support. How many of you love the FBI? How many FBI fans do we have out there? Are we really concerned that the FBI might be dismantled and their badges taken away? No. No, it probably should have been done a long time ago. There really isn't any constitutional need for federal law enforcement at the level that it is now. And finally, before we say goodbye, they've added another, I think, 14,000, or it might be, is it 140,000? I don't know. Sometimes the numbers get so big it don't matter. But they've authorized yet another round of IRS hirings, so they can go out and shake everybody down and collect taxes from anyone who, and be able to have their own little war on anyone that they claim owes taxes they haven't paid. And what's so sad is that taxes ought to be something that we pay willingly because we love our country and we're behind them and they're doing the right thing. And it should be something we should be able to withhold if our country is acting in tyranny or doing something that we the people don't agree with. We shouldn't be forced to turn our money over to a nation who's acting in a way that is opposed to our best interests. So is this the end of the world as we know it, or just the fall of the American empire? I don't know, but it looks like World War III is looming. The nukes are lined up in Ukraine. The Chinese are encircling Taiwan. We just that's another news story that's out. Taiwan's being encircled by the Chinese Navy just days after their election to show them the new president, to show the new president how strong they are and how ultimately China intends to take Taiwan. So when World War III pops off for real, we're probably in it already. Honestly, we've been in it for years. But when it really goes hot, it's going to happen in a blink of an eye. It's going to happen in the Middle East. It's going to happen in Europe. It's going to happen in the Pacific and the South China Sea. And it might very well happen along both coasts of the United States. And then there's that whole concern of civil war as they try to destroy a man, Donald Trump, whose really his main goal was just to try and save America, just to make America great again. Don't forget to support this channel. I couldn't make these videos. I couldn't come to you with my sermons. I couldn't talk about my kind of narrow point of view and give you an alternative view of the world if I didn't have your support. It's support from viewers like you. I receive no money from YouTube, so there's a link in the description to all the ways that you can contribute. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time on The End of the World as We Know It. And I feel fine. New world orders from China and Russia nowadays. What?